thrilled to have the opportunity to share some of the perspectives that Accenture Development Partnerships has been looking at the base of the pyramid, particularly as it relates to business-to-business partnerships. So I'm very pleased to be able to share some of that today. The objectives that I have for the 10 minutes allotted to me is to really provide all of you a view of some of the key drivers that we're seeing fueling business-to-business partnerships within the context of what we call convergence economy, as well as discuss a few emerging themes or even accelerators that can help initiate and further develop business-to-business partnerships within the base of the pyramid. Before I get started, just a very brief overview on Accenture Development Partnerships, really for those on the call that may not be familiar with us. We are, as you mentioned, a not-for-profit inside Accenture, termed a corporate social enterprise, which our mission is really to channel the core capabilities of Accenture, a global consulting firm, to those organizations working to further international development. So we have executed at this point more than 400 projects. We work with a range of clients or partners across the donor space, NGOs, and increasingly multinational companies that are also looking at their role to further international development and look at the needs and potential services for the base of the pyramid. So that's really where I'm going to focus most of my comments and discussion today. So the first contextual point I'd like to make is just to define what we have termed the convergence economy and why I feel it is important to consider when you think about what's fueling innovation in B2B partnerships at the base of the pyramid. On the left side, you see a traditional view of how the private sector, civil society, and public sector might be working, often alongside, but in parallel, and across different industries. But over the past decade, what we've seen, and this is highlighted in some of our research, is really an ecosystem, if I can use that term, is starting to emerge, where those silos have been broken down and there's really a blurring between the different sectors and their roles. You might see, for instance, a pharmaceutical company that traditionally is seeking to create access to its medicines within an emerging economy, actually start to think about, well, how can I invest in capabilities of the health systems and clinicians, taking on a very non-traditional role. So I use that as an example. I think it's important to consider that the way that businesses are starting to rethink their roles within developing economies allows opportunity for new types of partnerships leveraging these new skills that they're developing. So I just want to lay that as the backdrop before going into what I see, and this is going to probably echo a few of Susan's comments, but why are companies seeking greater business-to-business partnerships at the base of the pyramid? I see it really stems from a convergence of issues and interests that creates that value proposition. I think there's a growing recognition that in order to access the business opportunities at the next frontier of development, often in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, businesses need to work together to address complex and interconnected development challenges. So if you're thinking about how do I access the 1 billion people at the base of the pyramid, what are the needs that I need to start thinking about in terms of education, water, nutrition, that seek to allow me to access those consumers? If I'm going to try to access new suppliers within emerging economies, perhaps that offer competitive advantage based on their location or access to raw materials, if I'm seeking to engage with communities to perhaps reduce my risk of operating in those areas, or perhaps even looking to tap the next generation of talent. We see the incredible success stories coming out of South Asia and Southeast Asia, and where is that next market coming from? And certainly companies are thinking about how can emerging economies really help them to fuel their own innovation. I think the examples that will be shared with us in a moment certainly highlight some examples. I might even raise GE Health and the investments that they've made in order to develop diagnostic and medical device technology that's more portable, more rugged, less costly in order to serve developing countries. That same technology and innovation actually can now give them a competitive advantage within their developed markets as well. So where do partnerships come in? And when I say business-to-business partnerships, I am thinking about a range of interactions and relationships. Certainly there's one-to-one partnerships, and we'll hear a bit about some examples of those. I think more and more we're seeing strong alliances and coalitions. You think about companies that are coming together both across industries but also within industries in order to really access this opportunity. For instance, the Pink Ribbon, Red Ribbon Alliance is a partnership that brings together players like Merck, Bristol Myers Squibb, and GlaxoSmithKline to look at combating cervical cancer and breast cancer within the developing world. These are actors that typically are competitors, but in the context of base of the pyramid, they see real benefit in starting to work together and collaborate. And so I've highlighted on the right side 4 key benefits that I'm seeing primarily drive why businesses are coming together to serve the base of the pyramid. As Susan already mentioned, it's often about complementary capabilities and knowledge. If you are an ICT, a communications company that's seeking to leverage your platform to bring services related to agriculture or health or consumer information, you may need to then think about what businesses bring those capabilities to bear to allow me to develop a new service offering. I think related to that is the ability for companies to access then their partners' network of relationships. This can be incredibly important in this convergence ecosystem. You're able to then leverage the strong connections that your partners have made within different levels of government, within civil society, with other businesses and suppliers. And that then really allows you ultimately to gain greater buy-in, increase your reach, increase your scale. The last point I'll highlight here is one key driver that I see for companies coming together is really to create a kind of investment multiplier. If you're seeking to invest in a foundational issue at the base of the pyramid, helping to address a need that will really enable many companies to be more successful, it makes sense to sometimes pool your resources. In addition, if it is, let's say, a one-to-one partnership, the opportunity for co-investment in a new product or services certainly can lower that startup capital and possibly reduce your risk profile. So at a high level, these are the key drivers that I'm seeing for why companies are increasingly seeking B2B partnerships. Moving on, I'd like to maybe spend a moment and just discuss how business-to-business partnerships in developing economies can be quite different than what I'll call traditional B2B partnerships within developed markets, because I think there's a few emerging themes about what can make these partnerships unique and are worth consideration. So one is, I think, looking at the convergent business models that are emerging at the base of the pyramid. This then, in turn, leads to different types of business partners. So as you see more social businesses, hybrid kind of companies that are looking at their bottom line, but also looking at the social impact that they're able to create. These may often be local partners. They're asking for different measures of success coming out of those partnerships, and there's a greater emphasis on looking at not just profitability and sustainability, but also the shared value that might be created. I think there's convergent delivery models that are certainly coming into play within B2B partnerships at the base of the pyramid. And compared to developed economies where I think partnership may offer a competitive advantage, might accelerate the ability to enter a market or reduce the cost, I think in developing context today, it is often practically infeasible to go it alone. It is simply too costly, and partnership it may be the only viable option to bring a new product or service to market. And when you really think about the challenges that companies must overcome often in these emerging spaces, looking at the limited existing infrastructure or ability to create awareness and effectively market products, and certainly often doing this at lower margin thresholds, it's really important to be able to harness the technology, logistics, competency, people, reach of partners in order to make that sustainable. And then I think related to that, there's new platforms for growth when you think about delivery models. And what I mean here, I think mobile is certainly one we're going to talk more about, and I think many are aware of, but also thinking about some of the capacities being built up at the local level. For instance, Danone partnered with CARE in Bangladesh to build up a rural distribution network. This really worked with 2,000 women and helped support setting up hubs, allowing them to distribute product at the local level. Once this got going and was working and they showed a model for growth, as you can imagine, other multinational private sector companies have been coming to the table asking, how can I access this capability? How can I utilize this capacity to also perhaps make my products and services available at the base of the pyramid? And lastly, I think micro-enterprise, which has certainly been in place for a while. I think fast-moving consumer goods companies have already tapped into this as a way to actually reach the base of the pyramid consumers. But I think other types of products and services are also going to be thinking about how to leverage micro-enterprise. And then lastly, financial models that are now enabling these types of business-to-business partnerships. I see within multinational companies more willingness from the businesses to really starting to invest in emerging markets, and they have more quote-unquote patient capital available for fueling these types of partnerships. There's also, interestingly, impact investment that's becoming available that's lowering investment hurdles. So this may be from traditional donors even looking to fund private sector initiatives. And then I think the carbon market is certainly something to watch. I've seen a couple quite innovative examples of private sector companies working to bring product or service to the base of the pyramid. For instance, a Swiss social private enterprise that implemented water filtration systems in 1 million homes in Western Kenya, and they fronted the $30 million upfront cost of that, partnering with JP Morgan to then sell the carbon credits from that initiative by reducing the need to boil water and thus burning wood. And so this is a kind of self-sustaining investment that the private sector is making in partnership with other companies, harnessing innovative financing. So then just to summarize, and I won't talk about everything here, I think we've covered a lot of it, but I see a couple trends that I think are only going to continue to accelerate companies' investment in B2B partnerships at the base of the pyramid. I think that technology as an enabler is certainly one to note with mobile, cloud. Certainly, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg of what is possible with those platforms. I think consumers, the power of global brands, consumers are asking and driving more and more of companies' decisions globally to invest in sustainability and look at their role within developing markets. That's only really emphasized by new metrics that are emerging. I see the Global Reporting Initiative. I've worked with Oxfam on poverty footprinting. They've worked with companies such as Coke, Unilever to look at how do their models for both sourcing and delivering products and services at the base of the pyramid, how does that then in turn impact poverty? It's really, at the end of the day, I think, causing a fundamental rethinking of capitalism. Many are familiar with Michael Porter's construct of shared value. I think this is really starting to move forward. According to the survey that Accenture did in partnership with the UN Global Compact last year, 78% of CEOs told us that they believe their companies ought to be engaging in multi-stakeholder partnerships to be thinking about issues at the base of the pyramid, and over 90% said sustainability issues are really critical to their future strategy. So when you think about companies such as Unilever that are dropping their quarterly earnings guidance in order to promote a longer-term view of success, I think that this is just starting to really take hold, and fundamentally companies are thinking about what our different stakeholders, consumers, partners, suppliers, going to be asking and expecting of them in the next 20 years, 50 years. And so with that, I'll end there. I do want to just highlight, if you want more information, we do have the Convergence Economy paper that ADP has put forth last year. We've also worked with Vodafone and Oxfam on a connected agriculture piece that is also quite interesting. I think that if you have more questions, I'm certainly happy to hear from you. My email is here. So thank you for your attention. I hope there was some learnings that folks could take away from that. So now, thank you, Anastasia. You presented a wide